1981. One man can bring the world to its knees, and only one man can stop him. You know, one man and all the other people who helped him. This is Nighthawks.
One man can bring the world to its knees, and only one man can stop him. Universal Pictures presents Sylvester Stallone in Nighthawks, coming in April.
Hello, movie punditry. Welcome back to another episode of Random Rewatch. This is 1981, and this is Nighthawks, directed by Bruce Malmuth, starring Sylvester Stallone, Billy Dee Williams, Lindsay, Wagner, Persis, Khambatta, and Rutger Hauer in his American film debut. So this is a really interesting film. This film really combines kind of that 70s cop noir style with a little bit of the beginning of what the 80s are going to look like in terms of action movies. This is I'm going to say right from the top, this is a really great film. I haven't seen this thing probably in 25 years, and I watched it last week for the first time since then, and I was in it from the first moment, and this movie completely holds up 44 years later. So this is definitely a film worth watching. So this movie started out with a story by David Schraber, who had written the screenplay for The Warriors. He would go on to write films like Flight of the Intruder and The Hunt for Red October. This movie was originally written as a third French Connection film, but Gene Hackman wound up having no interest in coming back and doing another Popeye Doyle film. So kind of sat around for a while. 20th Century Fox wound up selling the script to Universal. Universal had it redeveloped into a standalone film. Paul Seibert came in and he worked on it a little bit and added some of the unique story elements. So he's got a co-story credit. And early on, this was attached as a Sylvester Stallone vehicle. Stallone was just coming off his success with writing, directing, and acting in Rocky II. He had also done in 1978, he had written and directed and acted in a film called Paradise Alley, which was his directorial debut. And coming off the success of especially Rocky II, coming into this, he was, a big star to reckon with. The original director was Gary Nelson. He had done The Black Hole. He had done Freaky Friday for Disney. He lasted about a week on the set. Apparently Stallone was very much a figure in this, having written and directed a couple of films and, was a upcoming star. He had a lot of weight, and he very much was involved in every aspect of this film. And to some degree, it has been said, especially by Lindsay Wagner, that he really kind of shadow directed this film. Whereas, there was a director on set, but a lot of the calls were being made by Sylvester Stallone. A lot of the decisions were being made. And we'll get to it at the end where he basically re-edited the film. So Gary Nelson's out. They bring in Bruce Malmuth. I think I pronounced that wrong. It's Malmuth, I think. And this is his first solo film. He had done a segment in an anthology film, had done, I think, some TV commercials and things, but this is his first feature film that he had done. In fact, they had already started filming, and when Nelson was fired, it took about a week for Malmuth to get in. So there was a sequence, I believe it was the subway chase towards the end of the film. There was a sequence where Stallone directed that sequence, and that was actually a problem because the Directors Guild has a rule, and the rule is that if somebody is hired on a film before the director and then the director is fired or leaves the project, that person who was hired before the director cannot replace the director. It's kind of a convoluted rule. So basically, you hire an actor and then you hire a director, and then the director leaves the project. You cannot use that actor to direct the film. If a director comes on and then the and then he hires an actor, and then that director leaves, that actor can step in, or a producer or whoever can step in. But if they're brought in before the director, they can't step in to replace the director. And I think the reason is for situations where you don't want, some prima donna actor on a vanity project firing a director and then taking over. So they wound up paying a fine to the DGA because they violated the rules. And even though Stallone only directed one scene, that's enough. Music on the film is done by Keith Emerson. He was mainly known for the band The Nice in the 1960s. He would become more widely known as being one of the founding members of Emerson, Lake and Palmer. But he also he did score a few films. The movie was filmed largely in location in New York City. There was one sequence that was filmed in London. The stunt coordinator on this film was Dar Robinson, a legendary stuntman and stunt coordinator. Dar is the guy who invented the Descender, which is that kind of winch apparatus that someone can jump or fall from a height and it'll slow them down as they get towards the ground. So, the pedigree of this film is really good. The DP on this film is James Contner. This is one of his early films. He had done Cruising with Al Pacino. He would go on to do a lot of television work. Other films like Jaws 3D, I don't think I'll blame him for that. The 1986 Burt Reynolds Heat, not the later Al Pacino, De Niro Heat. But he worked on Miami Vice a lot. He worked on Crime Story. He worked on the TV series, the early 1980s TV series, The Equalizer. Worked on Star Trek Enterprise. He's got a very unique style, and it's really starting to develop here in this film. This film has got a great, gritty look to it. It's a little dark, but it really, I think, captures the look of New York City in the late 70s, early 80s, which is it was a very different place than it is today. All right, so let's get into the film. We see a woman walking down the street, and there's a couple of guys following her. We know what's coming, and it turns out that this is the New York Police Department decoy squad. The woman is Sylvester Stallone. We've talked about him. We just did Cliffhanger a couple of months ago. His partner is Billy Dee Williams, just coming off The Empire Strikes Back. Probably best known for that and the 1970 TV movie Brian Song, which was a ABC TV film about Brian Piccolo and Gail Sayers. Brian Piccolo was a football player who had cancer, and that movie, if you were a kid in the 70s, I know my school, they showed us that movie every single year. So right off the bat, we have a chase scene where Stallone in the dress is chasing this guy through the streets and then up onto the train platform, and he disarms him with a scarf because the guy's got a knife. So right away, we kind of set the scene as to who these guys are and how they work. They work on the decoy squad where they try to get guys to commit crime. Wondering if that would be considered entrapment today, but that's the way they did things back in the day. We also see that they go in on a raid of a drug establishment, a drug den, and they find out that there are cops on the take. And that's kind of intercut with Stallone having a conversation with his ex-wife. And in this film, there's a lot of these intercuts where you have two things going on at once and they keep cutting back and forth between them. The film's got a couple of editors on it, Christopher Holmes, Stanford Allen. But as I said, Stallone was a big part of the final edit of this film. The wife here, Irene, is played by Lindsay Wagner. Kind of a little bit of stunt casting. She was exceptionally well known at this point for playing Jamie Summers in the TV series The Bionic Woman, which was a spin-off of The $6 Million Man. She was a very popular, TV actress at the time. She had done a couple of, smaller roles in films, but this is the first one, I think, where she's really kind of featured. Had done a lot of TV work in the late 60s, early 70s. She was a contestant on The Dating Game in 1969. Emmy winner for her work in The Bionic Woman. So we get the feeling that De Silva, who is Stallone's character, is on the outs with his ex-wife. They're coming in early to set up who Deke Da Silva is and what his character is like. We know that he's a cop. He's a clean cop. He kind of plays by his own rules, and he's got a lot of tension with his ex-wife. But he still has a thing for her, which is apparent in this conversation. He's also got this real, like, Serpico look going on. You know, he's got kind of longer hair. He's got the goatee. He's always wearing sunglasses, no matter what time it is. Got the leather jacket happening. And this is really kind of a thing that you see in, like, these cop shows and cop movies. You know, you have one who's, like, kind of really stylish and one who's kind of lower key. Thinking like Starsky and Hutch. You know, Starsky was very flamboyant. Hutch was kind of more mellow. That's the case here. You know, Deke is always wearing that leather jacket. He's got jewelry on. He's got his sunglasses on. And Fox has got a cap and a sweatshirt and an army jacket. So this is really kind of setting up who these guys are. We cut to London and we see a guy walking down the street. This is Rutger Hauer. He's here. He's wearing prosthetics and makeup because they don't want him to look like Rutger Hauer. This is his first American film. Rutger Hauer is he's a Dutch actor. He had done about a dozen films in Europe, and this is his first film that they brought him in to this because they wanted somebody who seemed kind of otherworldly, European, you know, just a different feel from an American actor. Works, obviously. He would go on to have a fantastic career, obviously really well known for his role as Roy Batty in Blade Runner, but also, you know, films like Lady Hawk or The Hitcher, Blind Fury, even Batman Begins. So he walks into this department store and he starts to chat up this girl at the counter.
What do you think?
To wrap it up for me.
Certainly.
I'll be back in a couple of minutes.
All right.
You really are very pretty.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But meanwhile, you see him sliding something underneath the counter. And terrorism in Europe in the 1970s was pretty common. Bombings and plane hijackings. There were plane hijackings all the time. You don't see plane hijackings anymore. But back in like the 70s and 60s, like plane hijackings were definitely happening all over the place. And so were bombings. And this is obviously going to turn out to be a bombing. He walks out of the store, and even as the explosion is going on, he gets on a payphone and calls the press.
United Press. I have an announcement to make for your international wire. The Wolfgar Command has just struck a blow against British colonialism. Be warned that I have a long arm, and I'm prepared to fight my enemies wherever they may be.
We then see him a little bit later, and he's in an apartment, and somebody is bringing him some stuff, but has been followed, and so he kills the messenger, kills the courier in the hallway, kills a couple of cops coming to check out what's going on. And you get the idea right away that this guy just doesn't care about anything or anyone other than what his goal is. They're investigating the homicides, and we meet Inspector Peter Hartman, who is played by Nigel Davenport. British actor, probably best known for A Man for All Seasons and Chariots of Fire. And you get the feeling that Davenport is kind of not really liked very much by the local police department.
It would be nice if someone listened before it was too late.
First the bombing, then 3 men come to get him, and he gets them.
Okay.
He's becoming quite a legend here, isn't he?
Maybe, but even a legend can go too far. He's now killed one of his own. A man in his position has to worry as much about his friends as his enemies.
This is another pretty common trope at the time, is the idea of the outsider cop. All that we're really missing at this point is the yelling commanding officer, but we will get to that in a minute. We cut to Paris, and we see a young woman. This is Persis Khambatta playing Shaka. She is, at this point, definitely best known for her role as Lieutenant Ilia in Star Trek The Motion Picture in 1979. She is an Indian actress and model. She won the Femina Miss India contest in 1965. Started acting in 1966. Did some Bollywood pictures. And then Star Trek came out in 1979, and that kind of really brought her out into the limelight. This is her first film after Star Trek, so it's kind of an idea of what she could accomplish and what her career was going to be. Unfortunately, it was kind of short. She died very early. She died of a heart attack in 1998. She was a chain smoker, apparently, and so she passed away from a heart attack at the age of 49. She meets up with Wolfgar. We cut back to New York, and they're doing another decoy, but it gets interrupted, and Fox and Deke get called back to headquarters, and they argue with the sergeant, and you get the idea that Deke and Fox are not liked by the rest of the police department.
Glory boys, huh? Nobody likes your crap. None of you. Neither one of you. They make anybody a sergeant these days. Here, kiss my ass, Fox.
In Paris, Wolfgar and Shaka go to a plastic surgeon who changes Wolfgar's appearance, and then they wind up killing him. We find out that De Silva and Fox are transferred to an anti-terrorist task force. They don't want to be, and they get into an argument with their lieutenant. Remember I talked about the screaming commanding officer? Well, here he is.
I've been working decoy, right? Now I'm pulled. I'd like to know what for.
Hey, look, you don't know me well enough to call me Mnaffle. But I know you, De Silva, the gung-ho Lone Ranger of the street crime unit, huh? Well, you can forget about that. Because we have been asked to cooperate with a special federal state unit, and we will.
This is Joe Spinell. This is a guy who he's friends with Stallone. He got his acting debut in The Godfather, playing Willie, and he would reprise that role in The Godfather 2. But he was in Rocky. He was, Rocky's loan shark boss. He was in Paradise Alley. He was back in Rocky 2. He always played like this kind of guy. But he here is Lieutenant Manafo, remember that name? Who is assigning Fox and De Silva to the task force. And of course, they get in a fight about it.
They're sending a specialist in from Europe, Interpol, to help organize the whole thing in conjunction with federal funding. And this department will extend every courtesy. Do you understand?
No, I don't understand.
Get your hands off me! Understand this, sucker! You're a cop, and you'll go where you're assigned.
There's another bombing in New York. Wolfgar meets a young woman at a dance club. This is Pam. She's played by Hillary Thompson, who had some small roles in some films throughout this period. And this is his MO. He hooks up with a young woman because he's charming. He's good looking. We see his new face, which is Rutger Hauer's face. He apparently immediately moves into her apartment and starts to store his stuff there. So as we see another bombing in New York, we're back in this briefing, and Hartman is trying to get these cops to understand that these guys are not what they're used to.
His pattern is that he immediately makes female contacts to establish safe housing for his armory. He also has a liking for fancy foods, expensive clothes.
And the big problem here is that Hartman is the kind of guy who's just like, look, we need to do whatever it takes because there are more lives at stake. And if there are some casualties, then that's fine because the greater good is served. And De Silva and Fox, especially De Silva, he's not, I'm not about being an assassin. Like, what if you want me to take the shot, but what if there are innocent people around? And Hartman is like, well, it is what it is. De Silva is kind of like, look, we have a process we have to go through. We can't just kill this guy. We need to collect evidence. We need to, we need to be cops. And Hartman's not having any of that.
There's a UN benefit at the Metropolitan Museum next week. Those people are already hostages. It's our responsibility to try and stop him.
Well, it's not my responsibility to be part of an accidental homicide.
Will you get out of this cop on the beat mentality? Your wife left you for it.
Because Hartman is pushing back against the bureaucracy and the process because that's what Wolfgar is using to stay free, is he knows his way around the process, and Hartman knows that they need to disrupt the process and they need to go directly after this guy. But De Silva's not having any of that because of what he's seen in war, maybe because of who he is. There's definitely a political kind of overtone to this movie in terms of, the idea of the government doing whatever it wants to do, whatever it feels is expedient to do. And trampling perhaps on people's rights. And, maybe that resonates in 2025 as well. Hartman makes a shot about his ex-wife, and that's why she left him. Then De Silva quits, but Fox goes to him, talks him into coming back, and he comes back and he talks to Hartman, and he's like, I want back in, but he has his doubts.
I don't know if I can take that shot with innocent people around.
Deke De Silva, drafted into the Army August the 4th, 1969. Volunteered for the Airborne School. Applied for, accepted by Officers Candidate School. Reassigned 1st Lieutenant, 1st Cavalry Division, Vietnam. And much more. The most interesting statistic is 52 registered kills in combat service. One would have said that you were quite adept at pulling the trigger, wouldn't one?
But Hartman trusts him, and Hartman knows that he's exactly the kind of guy that Hartman wants. He doesn't want somebody who just indiscriminately shoot. He wants somebody who'll process the idea and make sure that the shot needs to be taken, but then will take the shot if that determination is made. Hartman's not the bad guy here. Hartman kind of throws his service record back in his face. He's like, you got 52 kills. You will take the shot when you need to. So Wolfgar, having gotten rid of Pam, winds up going to a new spot that he's got set up in a bodega somewhere in the basement of a bodega. He meets up with Shaka, De Silva, and Fox, the task force. They're learning about him, and they're finding out. They know that he likes the nightlife. He likes the ladies. They find in Pam's apartment. They find some evidence that that Pam has been hanging out at a couple of places. So they start checking nightclubs and dance clubs, and they wind up in this one place where they are escorted by Big Mike. This is Tony Manafo. Remember that name? This guy's name actually is Manafo. This is another friend of Stallone's who shows up from time to time. He was in Judge Dredd. He was in Demolition Man. He was in Rambo. He was in Daylight. He was in The Specialist. He was in Oscar. He was in Rocky V. He was in Lockup. He was in Over the Top. Basically, he's Clint Howard to Ron Howard. That's Tony Manafo to Stallone. But they find Wolfgar in there. De Silva's been doing this sketch, and he sees this guy, and he makes a change to a sketch. And they figure out that the guy's Wolfgar. And then there's another big chase scene. I think this is the one that Stallone directed. And in this scene, Fox is cut. Wolfgar's hiding behind a wall. Fox comes running. He cuts him in the face and runs away. And De Silva has to obviously stay with Fox. I'm not going to play the clip. If you're watching this movie, this is an amazing Stallone moment. Shaka lets Wolfgar know that Hartman is here. De Silva's in the hospital with Fox, but then he calls Irene, and he's trying to warn her, and she kind of softens up to him, and she invites him to dinner. So maybe there's a reconciliation in place here.
It would take too long to explain. It's too complicated to go into now. We'll talk later.
Well, all right. How about this?
Why don't we have dinner together next weekend? We could go to your favorite little Italian restaurant.
Did I say something that brought that on?
Maybe.
Are you serious?
Absolutely.
Well, how about I make the reservation?
Now we're at the UN gathering, and this team, the tactical team, is running security for it. And Hartman and De Silva are getting along great. They're talking about going out for Chinese food later. They seem to have patched everything up. They seem to be working well together. They seem to trust one another. And Hartman's coming up the escalator, talking about who's going to pick up the check. And he sees Shaka, and she's waiting there for him at the top of the escalator with a gun.
By the way, who's picking up the check?
Well, I believe in age before beauty, don't you?
Shaka.
So he broadcasts her name over the radio, and everybody knows what happened. Then we see the UN diplomats there getting on the Roosevelt Island tram next to the 59th Street Bridge. And my question here is why? Why are they doing this? Because there's a terrorist. there was just a killing at a UN event. Why are UN delegates getting on the Roosevelt Island tram without tons of security? It's a great movie, but that's kind of a hole that doesn't make a lot of sense. But Shaka and Wolfgar are on the tram. They stop the tram, and Wolfgar, obviously makes the announcement that we're taking over.
This is Shaka. Do not underestimate her because she's a woman. She has no maternal instincts. Don't be so afraid. Back up against the window. I like your hat.
And he makes a quip about the woman's hat, and then you get the idea that, he's relaxed. He's ready to go. De Silva shows up in a helicopter, and Wolfgar takes a woman, the wife of, I think, the French diplomat. This is Corinne Lorraine. And he kills her where De Silva could see it. He makes his demands, and he wants a plane at the airport. He wants a bunch of people released. He wants a bus at the terminal so that they can go to the airport, and he wants De Silva driving the bus. But first he wants to release a child because there's a baby on board. And so we have this sequence where there's a winch lowered from the tram. I'm not sure that there's actually a winch on the tram, but there is for the movie. They lower the winch from the tram, and Sylvester Stallone does this stunt where he's hanging over the East River on this cable, and it's pretty scary. Stallone is pretty famously afraid of heights. I think we talked about that in Cliffhanger. And so he's, this is 230 feet, I think, between the river and the tram. And he's hanging on this steel cable underneath the tram. And they get on a harness, and they're literally just filming him doing it because he wanted to do the stunt. So he has, you can't really see it, but he's got a big knife in his hand so that in the event something happens and the cable breaks and he falls into the water because that cable weighs a couple of 100 pounds, he can cut the harness away. It's pretty scary, actually, and I give a lot of props to Stallone for doing it. But he goes up into the tram. They give, Wolfgar gives him the baby and tries to convince him gives him the old, we're not that different speech. And, tries to convince him that he's really the good guy. And like typical, every bad guy is the hero of his own story.
I enjoy killing, but it's my job. Someone has to do it. I represent oppressed victims who have nothing. I speak only for them. I'm their voice. I'm a liberator.
You think you're a liberator?
It fascinates you.
So he lowers De Silva and the baby, and they're getting ready to get the bus and the plane and the whole bit. De Silva goes to one of the technical people, and he's like, I need a recorder, I need a microphone, I need an activation button, I need 10 feet of wire. I don't know why he needs 10 feet of wire. And he rigs this thing up so that he's got a button on his shoulder that he can press, and it plays the briefing that Hartman was giving about Shaka. So they get ready to drive the bus, and Fox is trying to talk Deke out of it.
You sure you know what the hell you're doing?
I think so.
You know when that bus gets to the airport, he's gonna waste you.
Why are you always trying to cheer me up? You said before it's my choice, didn't you?
I did say that, didn't I?
All right, I'll see you later.
I'll be watching.
But Stallone's being Stallone, so he's got to go. And they get the people off the tram, and they're wrapped up in a rope, and Wolfgar and Shaka are in the middle. They get the people started loading, getting near the bus, and Deke is there, and he presses the button, and he starts to play the recording about Hartman talking about Shaka, and this freaks her out, and she kind of steps away, and Fox is there with a rifle. He kills her. Wolfgar gets on the bus, starts to drive the bus, drives the bus into the river. Pretty cool stunt there. And then now they're at the bodega. They figure out where he is. They're going through his stuff. De Silva's looking through his papers, and he stops on one, and then he hands it to Fox, and he runs out the door, and Fox is like, oh, Christ, and then he runs out the door after him. And then now we have a cut to this end piece, which is at Irene's apartment, and we see her come home, and Wolfgar's across the street watching her. And there's this cool music in the background that's just like escalating up. Wolfgar sneaks in. None of this works. None of this works on its face because it seems silly that you would see Sylvester Stallone be like, he's in a dress. Oh, that's clearly a woman. You have to go back, bring your mind back to the beginning of the movie where he's in the decoy squad. This is literally what he does for a living. So they're kind of bringing us back around full circle. Wolfgar sneaks in, comes up with the knife. Deke turns around. He's got the gun. They stare at each other for a minute. And then there is the loudest gunshots you have ever heard in your life. And there's these weird, janky camera moves. And Wolfgar goes back out and through the door. This was Rutger Hauer's first scene in the movie. This is the first thing he shot was his death scene. And, it works. It's a little overly dramatic, but it kind of works. And then that's it. That's the end of Nighthawks. This movie was heavily re-edited in post-production. Stallone had a very heavy hand in it. They did some test screenings. Funny part is that audiences really liked the Rutger Hauer stuff, but Stallone re-edited it to reduce his scenes and to bring Deke more to the forefront. They also had to remove some time for the MPAA. They had to remove some of the violence in the film in order to get the film to have an R rating. There's a longer nightclub scene, and Wolfgar's death scene was longer, including with more gunshots, including a fatal shot to the head, which was done with an animatronic robotic head that had an explosive in it. We didn't get to see that. The film was released on April 10th, 1981. It's kind of a weird date for a film like this. Is in April. I was wondering if the studios are trying to push back the summer season a little bit, which really wasn't even a thing until like 1975 when Jaws came out, and then 1977 when Star Wars came out, and all of a sudden there started to be like this summer season thing. So maybe they were trying to push it back into April, but it came out April 10th. It made $5 million. It had a $5 million budget. It wound up $14.9 million domestically, about $5 million overseas. So it made $19.9 million, so $20 million on a $5 million budget. Had a $2.5 million opening weekend. It's got a 72 on Rotten Tomatoes. I think that's a little harsh. I think this film's better than that. It's got a 56 on Metacritic. That's really harsh. I couldn't find a CineScore for it. It's probably just too old for that. Had mixed reviews. Some reviewers really liked it. Some reviewers thought it was very suspenseful and well done. Some thought it was kind of cheesy and melodramatic. Roger Ebert did not do a review for this in the paper, but Siskel and Ebert did talk about it. Gene Siskel, he actually really kind of liked it. Roger Ebert did not really like it.
I disagree. I can't recommend the film. I don't think the reality of terrorism is so great in this film. For one thing, the terrorist belongs to no identified organization or cause.
But Roger,
he's a generic brand terrorist.
He is supposed to be that. It is very clear that this film was not supposed to make us question whether terrorist activity should exist. It's not a political film. It's a straight thriller.
I think that's just a cop-out by the people who wrote the film. I have some other problems.
In 2019, it was announced that there was going to be a remake that never happened. And there's also supposed to be a reworked series on Peacock, which Stallone was producing. That never happened. So we're just kind of stuck with what we have. And what we have is a really good example of a film of the period, and it's watchable. It holds up. And I think, the idea of domestic terrorism was something that was not super believable, and that's part of the problem that the studios had with it, was they weren't sure that it was going to be believable. I think a lot of the stuff that's in this film right now kind of really resonates in 2025. So give this a watch. This is Nighthawks, and thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time.